All right, what's going on, everyone? So it is a big day in the U.S.-Iran war with elements from both countries meeting in Pakistan right now, trying to hash out some sort of negotiated settlement. Meanwhile, we just got a report that the first U.S. Navy warship pushed their way through the Strait of Hormuz without coordination or permission from the IRGC. This was a show of force, a freedom of navigation maneuver, the first since the war began about, 5-6 weeks ago at this point. And looking at this, Iran is saying that's not at all what happened. Iran, for their part, says they actually threatened the U.S. and the vessel turned back around and got out of there. But this and one other item that we're going to get into today kind of gives us an idea of who might have the upper hand as these negotiations continue. But first things first here, for anybody that finds these videos or this information valuable, the best way to support the channel is over on Substack, and it's free. Substack has ad-free, sponsor-free videos, so it's these without all the interruptions that you get on YouTube. The best feature over there, I think, is the community chat. Now, the only thing we're charging for on Substack is to initiate a thread in the community chat. But free members can just engage with that and go back and forth with the community, and I think it's really valuable. It's people bringing up articles and podcasts and sources that I hadn't come across yet. So if you're looking for more information, more detailed information, not just from me, but from this community as a whole, Substack is the place to do that. Now, earlier today, just a few moments ago, we got a report from Barack Ravid of Axios where he says several U.S. Navy ships crossed the Strait of Hormuz on Saturday. They say the move was not coordinated with Iran. It's the first time this has happened since the beginning of the war. Let's pull up a map of the Strait of Hormuz to give you an idea of how significant this is in a lot of ways. Again, Iran up here to the north. We've got the Persian Gulf, this body of water sticking up to the northwest. The Strait of Hormuz is this narrow stretch here. So this is the, very easily contested by Iran that sits around the entirety of the north, east, and west of this strait. So to try to quote Sal from what's going on with shipping, I want to say the lane is around 21 miles wide that ships can move through, very easily covered by Iranian drones. So this has been, right now, drones. Also maybe mines. There was a report that Iran put some mines out here and doesn't know where they are. That seems like a minor issue. We'll get to that. Either way, the report from Ravid, they said the U.S. officials said the warships crossed the Strait of Hormuz from east to west, so on your screen here, from right to left, to the Arabian Sea, and then made their way back through the strait into the Gulf. This is an operation based on freedom of navigation through international waters. So taking Ravid at his word here, we had a U.S. vessel, I want to say it was the Michael Murphy, moved through the Arabian Sea to the Gulf of Oman. At this point, very close to Iranian anti-ship missiles, right? So they're moving within range of Iranian strike capabilities. And a lot of U.S. Navy vessels, since the war began, have moved back. So just moving closer to Iran is significant at this point, but then pushing through the strait, and according to a couple different analysts right now, it looks like they made it a little ways through, maybe near Dubai, turned back around, and then exited the area. So freedom of navigation showing this can be done. A couple key notes here. There's no indication that this was a minesweeping operation. We haven't seen that. It looks like just the one ship. There's also no indication at this point that it was an escort operation, that they were going in, picking up U.S. or allied tankers and kind of helping move them out of the Gulf. So very limited information on this one right now. We do have a couple screenshots of people that are tracking this stuff on publicly available information that appears to show that at least at one point within the last couple hours, the Michael Murphy was in the Persian Gulf, which is significant. Again, the first freedom of navigation maneuver by the U.S. Navy through the Strait of Hormuz since the war began. Now, this came alongside President Trump issuing a statement just a few moments ago saying that we have begun clearance operations in the strait. Quote, well, he went a lot of different directions, if we're being honest. I'm going to kind of dial it down a little bit, but still try to give you the gist. He says the fake news media has lost total credibility. Not that they had any to begin with. Because of their massive Trump derangement syndrome, they love saying that Iran is winning when in fact everyone knows that they are losing and losing big. He did go on to drop his second praise be to Allah, second in a week actually. So that seems to be a thing we're doing now. He said, we're now starting the process of clearing out the Strait of Hormuz as a favor to countries all over the world, including China, Japan, South Korea, France, Germany, and many others. Incredibly, they don't have the courage or the will to do this work themselves. So little bit out of nowhere. Again, ceasefire talks are ongoing right now, and depending on how you look at this, there are some ways you could view this as an aggressive move. There's also the argument that this is an international waterway and the United States is simply doing what the United States and any other country around the world should be doing, ensuring that waterway is staying open. The fact that this is happening as the ceasefire kicks off is no doubt a little bit risky. In fact, the Iranian response to this was they said, hey, the United States was on the verge of having these talks fall apart because of this aggressive military maneuver. The Iranian Fars news agency claimed the destroyer, which they say was heading from the port of Furjaya towards the strait, was forced to turn around at the Strait of Hormuz after a warning from Iran. They say Iran, through Pakistani intermediaries, warned that if the ship continued its journey, it would be subjected to fire within 30 minutes, which would also harm the ongoing negotiations between the United States and Iran. A representative of the Iranian Ministry of Foreign Affairs stated that a potential violation of the ceasefire was prevented thanks to immediate diplomatic and military actions. Now, this gives us a little bit of an idea of who is going into these talks feeling like they have the upper hand. And when you get into these wartime negotiations, there's a couple of things you have to consider. One is who genuinely has the upper hand, like who has the leverage to force something, to force a certain concession or an in-state out of the talks. But also important, maybe not as important, but it's pretty close up there, is who thinks they have the upper hand. And that's a dangerous area we get into in war, because a country might think they have more leverage at their disposal and they don't, and they continue fighting, and then the war just drags on and becomes even more deadly. So it looks like this, based off of this little piece alone, that the United States is going into this feeling like they have the upper hand, and that pushing a warship through the strait, Iran would not risk firing at them and turning off the negotiations because Iran has too much to gain from the negotiations. So this, assuming this story is true of the Michael Murphy pushing through the Strait of Hormuz, which from what we can tell at this point it is, that is a signal that the United States is entering into this feeling confident that we have the upper hand and that Iran is not willing to risk anything. Again, Iran did not get notification that the ship was in the Strait of Hormuz by looking out here. They would have had notification, advance warning as the ship moved up, and it would have taken a while. Okay, these ships aren't all that fast. So the fact that Iran did not report this until after the United States announced that the freedom of navigation maneuver was complete makes me believe that it did happen, and Iran is now framing it in a way to try to regain a little bit of stature there. Now, there's another aspect here also worth bringing up, money. And this is one that just popped up yesterday. But again, if this one is true, based off the reports we're seeing at this point, this one would actually suggest that Iran feels like they have the upper hand. Just earlier today, Iran Tasnim News said that they have agreed that all of the preconditions for talks have been met. They said there's been a reduction in Israeli strikes, shifting from Beirut to southern Lebanon, and Washington has accepted releasing Iranian assets. And because of this, talks are ready to begin. Now, a couple notes there. First off, the Hezbollah and IDF fight over there in northern Israel, southern Lebanon, has not stopped. It's still ongoing right now. So pretty notable that at this point, Iran just yesterday said, we are not going to talk until that fighting stops. That fighting has not stopped. It is still ongoing. And today, with all parties in Pakistan, they say, hey, it's a reduction. So we'll take the reduction. That is a signal that Iran might feel like they actually need to stick around for these talks, and they do not have the upper hand to be able to walk away right now based off of what they, less than 24 hours ago, called a violation of the ceasefire. The second part is the release of these funds. Now, a couple different sources, depending on who you look at, but somewhere around the $10 billion mark is the figure I've seen floated around there. The White House has said no. They came out and said there have been no funds released. Now, in the reporting that I've seen, they've not argued whether or not Iran has been asking for that or whether or not it's been discussed or even agreed upon. But the statements have been no funds have been released to Iran. That's a big one, right? If we felt the need to, two ways to look at that. First off, the funds did not come into the conversation until yesterday, at least publicly. So if Iran felt comfortable yesterday throwing out new demands, that would suggest that maybe they think they have the upper hand and can exact more concessions from the United States at the last minute. Also, if they are able to receive any number in there, $1 to $10 billion from the United States simply to sit down and talk about a ceasefire, that's a problem for us. Again, that would indicate that Iran, and in that case, maybe even the United States, views that Iran has the upper hand entering these talks. Now, Tasnim News added four fundamental and non-negotiable conditions for the mediators in Islamabad right now. And these are interesting because it's different than the 10-point plan. It's different than the 15-point plan. This is what Iran is saying, like, this has to happen or we won't sign anything. First, full sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. Don't love that. If that's their starting point, that wasn't even on the table 2 months ago, right? If Iran would have gone to the United Nations and said, hey, we're ready to talk, but we want full control over the Strait of Hormuz, I'm like, what are you talking about? So that's not good that that's a talking point right now, or one of their hard lines. They also want complete war reparations from the United States and Israel, unconditional release of all of their blocked assets, and a durable ceasefire across the entire West Asia region. So again, they're drawing their hard lines. I would say the United States has our hard lines as well. Israel's are a little bit different. But I wanted to bring this up because from what I can tell, this is the first time that the Iranian government or Iranian government-affiliated media is coming out saying, these are our red lines. These are the things that we have to accomplish in these talks. And they're adding to it, right? I mean, I think we really need to consider at this point that it is becoming increasingly likely that the Strait of Hormuz, the status quo over that major artery, is going to change. It's hard to see that we're going back to where it was before the war began. I'm optimistic that it's not going to be full Iranian control, but if Iran is now viewing that as one of their conditions to end the war at all, we have to probably be mindful that that could be one of the things the United States maybe cedes on if we are able to achieve other objectives in these talks. So again, the next 24, 48 hours are going to be really significant. We'll find out. Is this actually something that we can bring it into at the negotiating table, or is the war just set to begin once more? Again, for anyone interested, the best place to keep up with all of this, not just my content, but also from the community, is on Substack. That link will be in the description below. But that's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.